So once again, a very, very warm welcome to everyone who has joined in. If you're listening to the recording as well, welcome to the session. What we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be looking at the BMNG 6222 assignment 1. So we're going to be looking at the first assignment that is due for business management 2B. Okay, so at this stage, you would have downloaded the assignment, you would have had a read through it, you would know that it's about Capitec Bank, and we're going to be discussing it in more detail on how to actually go about answering it and where can you start with the assignment. Okay, so remember the assignment is due on the 12th of September, so we've got just tomorrow will be exactly 2 weeks to complete the assignment. So you've got 2 weeks to complete it, so you should have at least already started it. I will put this recording up as well so that you can go and listen to it again. And there's also that NSS later on this week, which you can also use and join and use as a platform to ask any questions that you may have. So what I'm going to do tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm going to go through each question and then give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have as well. Okay. So first things first is that you would have, like I said, already have downloaded the assignment. So at this stage, you should have downloaded the assignment. You should know where to find the assignment, and you should have at least started reading through that case study of the assignment. Okay, so if you don't know where to download it, remember you find it all on the student portal under student materials. All right, so that is exactly where you're going to find it under the student materials tab on your hub or on your student portal. My VC is what you're going to learn. Before we move on, I just want to give you a little bit of background about the case study and about the scenario that we are dealing with. It's a very, very nice case study. So we're speaking about Capitec Bank, okay? So Capitec Bank kind of entered the market in South Africa and did really, really well. They sort of had a niche market where they offered cheaper banking rates for people who perhaps couldn't afford other banking rates. And they were innovative. They disrupted the market. They stole, if you will, in inverted commas, some consumers, some customers from other banks as well. So they have this dynamic CEO whose name is Harry Fourie. Okay, so Harry Fourie has been working in the banking industry for many, 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 many years in South Africa. I think if I remember correctly, it was over 17 years that he was working in the banking industry. And then he was employed by Capitec, and he kind of entered and shook things up and really took Capitec to the next level as well. Okay, so Capitec was kind of doing a plateau, and then Harry Fourie stepped in and he kind of led them to higher levels, and he sort of shook things up. And if you go and read the case study, there are a lot of stats that they've said. So they grew by 15%, and then they grew by another 19%. And he had a constant finger on what the competitors were doing and how could he be better than the competitors. So as a new entry into the banking market, there was lots of innovations. The staff were well trained, so they go on to speak about how the staffs were all committed to serving the public, to serving the people, and he had a lot of success within his department in which he was as well. Okay, so they speak quite highly of Mr. Fourie in the case study, and we're going to be analyzing Capitec as a bank. We're going to be analyzing Mr. Fourie, Harry Fourie, as a leader, and we are going to be looking at what Capitec did well and what could they perhaps improve on. So that's just a little bit about a background about the actual case study, just to give you some idea of what you should be reading. So remember, guys and girls, that the case study is not enough information, okay? So you have to go and Google Capitec Bank and read a little bit more in detail about where they are currently, what are they doing, what are they good at, what are they not so good at. So you will find a lot of information in the case study, but you do need to do extra research on Capitec Bank and where they find themselves within the market as well. Okay. So let's just move on then to when it is. So the assignment is divided up into relatively long questions. So there are a few long questions that we would have. And all of the questions, I want to say, are based on theory and then application. So if we look at most of our questions, that's kind of the approach that we are going to be looking at. So we have our theory, and then we have our application. So I always tell the students that's our TA approach. Approach all your questions in this way. Theory first and application comes next. So we first focus on the theory, and then we will always have some application. So if you have a look at the very first question, question 1.1, you'll see I always give you guys a page reference number. It doesn't mean you only need to use that. I always tell the students that that's the starting point. So that's the starting point of what you could use for it as well. So if you had to start your research process, you could start on page 92 and 93 of the management. So what do we need to look for here? This question is asking us to differentiate between the process, systems, and contingency approaches to management and apply this to Capitec and say, how does Capitec use the contingency approach in their happening? Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is the theory. So let's take the T part of question 1.1, the theory. Differentiate meaning tell the difference. So in an answer, differentiate. So define process approach, define systems approach, and define contingency approach. And then tell me what is the difference between the three approaches. So remember, these are management approaches. These are how people manage a specific organization. They manage in a process way, systems, contingency. Okay? So a process, if we had to nail it down, would be the basic function of management, where we look at planning, leading, organization, and controlling. Systems approach is where we add on a few details and we say, well, that is how everything is interrelated. So how the whole system is interrelated and independent. And then contingency, in a nutshell, is how everything changes to each situation. So contingency approach tells us that we need to change or adapt our management style depending on the situation that we find ourselves in. Okay, so we have these three different approaches. Step one, differentiate between them. So explain each one of the processes that you can see here on the screen, and then differentiate. What is the difference between them? And then step two, when we look at our application, very, very important. So application is always a key element of what we're going to be doing. So we look at the application and then we apply it to Capitec. So in other words, the question is saying, why do we say Capitec leads in a contingency approach? Why would they, you know, if you look at the exact wording of the question, I know some of it cuts off there. I do apologize. I see when it uploaded it is, but they're saying that the contingency approach is applied within Capitec, and they want to ask, how is it applied? So how does Capitec apply the contingency approach? So why do we say that Capitec changes its management style in order to suit the specific situation? So what in the case study is evident that Capitec is looking at each situation differently and changing the management approach to suit the situations, the specific situations in which they find themselves. So for 15 marks, you're looking at about 7 marks for the theory and 8 marks for the application. So a good balance between theory and application is important. Please, ladies and gents, don't forget the application. Application is very, very important. So step one, theory. Step two, application. You will find the information about the three different approaches as a starting point on page 92 all the way up until 93, where they go into detail about what each one of these approaches are. Okay, so looking at the theory there, analyzing process approach, analyzing systems approach, and analyzing contingency approach, and then applying only the contingency approach to Capitec. So you don't have to worry about the process and the systems. You are only going to focus then on the contingency. And yes, good question, Nate, there as well. It's always advisable to have some extra information on. Obviously, like I said in the beginning, that the case study has got information, but you will need to find additional information that don't have all the answers in the case study as well. So yes, for the theory, the textbook is sufficient. So for your theory answer, so for the T part, the theoretical part, there's a lot of information on this specific concept in the textbook, so you're welcome to use the theory. But obviously when you're going to apply it, you might need to read it here or there another article as well, and you'll see there are some other questions. I will get to the ones as well where you will need extra theory, but for this one there's quite a lot of theory in the textbook for this approach, so it should be sufficient for that as well. But in general, the rule is that your online tutors and myself, we always like to see that you have consulted a few extra sources as well. It's always good practice to, to show that you can do a little bit of further research. Okay. Please, guys, if there's any other questions, you're welcome to stop me at any time, and I will answer them as well. Question 1.2, again, we're looking at another 15-mark question, relatively straightforward, so nothing too out of the ordinary here that we're looking at. Again, we're focusing on Capitec, okay? So we're still focusing on Capitec. That's our case study for the entire questions that we're going to look at. So we're still focusing on Capitec. And here, guys, very, very important, we are looking at the market environment, okay? So we are analyzing the market environment. So please remember, ladies and gentlemen, in business management, we have got 3 environments that we focus on. We focus on the micro environment, we focus on the macro environment, and then we focus on the market environment, okay? So we are specifically focusing on the market environment, okay? So the market environment is technically part of our macro. It is an external environment. But what is the market environment? The market environment is when we speak about the competitors, the labor market, the customers. So we look at the external environment, factors that we do have somewhat control over. Remember, if we had to be sort of technically 100% correct, the market environment is what lies between the micro and then the remote environment or the external environment. So it's sort of the in-between, the factors from inside the organization and the externals, the ones that I can't control. And this is what is in between that. So you'll see that in our textbook, they give us 5 factors. So they give us the 5 factors within the market environment. And your job for this question is to analyze each one of those 5 factors. So we always say, again, if we look at our TA approach, theory first. So explain the market environment and briefly define each one of the factors, okay? So explain what the market environment is and explain each one of the factors. So that's the theory. And then application. Then you take each one of those factors and you apply it to Capitec. So over here, you might need to do some extra research, so you won't find all this information in the case study. So you will need to research further, and you will also need to use a little bit of logic and a bit of thinking so I always tell the students, put yourself in Capitec Bank for this question and see what it is. If you are looking out towards the outside world into this market environment, what is it that you are seeing? The answer is not going to jump out at Google for you. You really need to think a little bit for it. So let's just do an example, okay? So let's take one of the first factors that you would have here. Let's say it is consumers or customers, okay? So my first step, define customers. So tell me, what are customers? What is the definition of customers theory? Secondly, apply customers to Capitec. In other words, who are the consumers of Capitec? Who is Capitec's customers? So define them, analyze them, say what they are, who are they, what is the target market that they are looking for. So who are the customers that we are looking for? Who are the clients? What are their needs? What is their buying behavior of these consumers that they would have? Okay. And then obviously you move on to the next one. So those are the type of things. I won't do it for all of them. I just wanted to give you an example of how you can go about applying each one of these factors. So just to recap, theory. So you're going to have 5 definitions of each of the factors, one for each of them. And then you're going to apply each factor to Capitec. And that would then give you a total of 15 marks. So just to look at the mark allocation there, you've got 5 different factors. Remember the first one we said was customers. Each question, each factor is going to be worth 3 marks. So each factor, 3 marks. That will give you the total of 15. And of those 3 marks, you're going to get 1 mark for the definition and 2 marks for the application. So 1 mark for defining the customer and 2 marks for applying the customer. And then we're going to do the same for each one of the factors. And that then would give you the total of 15 marks. Okay. So I hope that you're happy with that question, and then I can move on to the next one. Remember, you are welcome to ask questions if you have any questions. And then question 1.3 for 10 marks. One of my favorite questions to mark as well, a SWOT analysis. Okay, so a SWOT analysis is a term that we all know, guys. As business students, you're already in your second year. You would have studied SWOT analysis last year. Next year, when you continue with business again, we are going to be looking at what is a SWOT analysis. So remember, SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So for this question, it is mainly application. I don't expect a definition of each one of the elements of the SWOT analysis. We are just looking for the application. So I always tell the students for this question, at least have 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses, 3 opportunities, and 3 threats. It may seem like a lot, but at least then you have covered all your bases. So what do we need to do? We need to take Capitec Bank and we need to again put ourselves as if we were part of Capitec Bank. What are some of the weaknesses of Capitec Bank? So list 3 weaknesses that Capitec Bank is currently facing. Okay? What are they good at? Find 3 things that they have in their favor. 3 weaknesses that they've identified, and then also 3 strengths. What are we doing right? What are we looking at that is in our favor, that is a good sign for us? And then if we move over to the externals, 3 opportunities. So identify any 3 opportunities that Capitec can reach out at, and then look at 3 threats. Okay, so then 3 threats. What should they be aware of? Are there competitors that they need to be aware of? Are there other applications in the banks that they need to be aware of that might be threatening? Are there other ways of doing banking that they need to be aware of that's maybe threatening their systems or their ways? Okay. So there's no word count for this question. So good question then, Nate. No word count, and you are allowed to do it in a table format. So if you wanted to do it in a table format, sorry, I'm just drawing a rough thing here so that you can see. You have your block that you've got there. So you've got strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and you're welcome then to just put them in bullet form as well. So as long as you don't just have one word, so don't just say, don't just speak one word. So have like a sentence in your bullet form, but it doesn't have to be a paragraph explaining. So let's say, for example, let's use Neo's example here as a weakness, poor customer service. So that is sufficient. 3 words. So you could just have under the weakness, you could just have the words poor customer service. You don't have to write Capitec Bank has poor customer service because da 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 da. No, you're just doing the SWOT analysis. So poor customer service, you can write all three of them underneath each other. And again, you're allowed to use the bullet points, and you can use a 4-grid table and type each bit into a block, definitely. So you're definitely welcome, like I say, to insert a table and do it in a table form, if it's going to make more sense for you. There's no way in which you have to do it, but like I say, a table is easier to sort of orientate yourself around it. And yes, you can definitely do it in that, and just add in, so like I've done here, that you would do it. So Deerwold, for this one, you don't need to justify your answers to why you say that. You're just doing the SWOT analysis. So you don't need to go and elaborate as to why you say that that is a weakness or why you say that that's a threat. No, you can just list the threat and just like sort of explain it. As long as I'm able to read from your writing, what is the threat, what is the weakness, so I say don't just write one word, and don't just say poor, because what is poor? It could be anything. Poor customer service, that's a clear definition. If I read it, I know what the threat or the weakness is. Okay, so you don't need to justify it, but just have enough words there that I'm able to read it as for what it is. Okay, so let's just recap this question. You can start reading about SWOTs all on these pages here, and you are welcome to do it in the table format. So you can do it in a grid, in a table format. It's optional. If you want to do it underneath each other, just 1, 1, 1, that's also fine. But like I say, it is always nice to do it in a table format, but that's entirely up to you. You don't need a paragraph or a full sentence even for each one of the items, as long as we are able to see what it is that you are mentioning, then that's acceptable. Okay. So I hope that you are happy with that question. It seems like a lot of work for 10 marks, but once you get going and stuck in and searching for the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats, then you will be able to find them. Remember as well, guys, the answers might not jump out at you from Google. You might actually have to sit down and think about Capitec as an organization, and just think a little bit, on your own, to see what are some of the threats that you could identify. Remember to reference any source that you have used. So again, in this question and all the questions, remember to reference those sources. Okay. So I hope that was all the questions from that, because the next section we move on to question 2. So that's question 3, those first 3 questions. Capitec, we're looking at their market environment, we're looking at the SWOT analysis, and we are looking at the systems approach versus process systems and contingency approaches. Now we can move on to question 2. Question 2, we speak more about the person. So now we're focusing on Mr. Harry Nel as himself. So we're focusing on the CEO of Capitec. Okay, so Harry Nel, like I said, was employed. He's been in the banking industry for many, many years, and now he was employed by Capitec, and he is now the leader. And it's our job to say whether he's a good leader or what is he doing right, what is he doing wrong. So the first question that they're asking for us is focusing on the interpersonal role that leaders will play. Okay, so if you have to look on page 51, they've got a short little bit of information on the interpersonal role, but specifically here as well, you're going to need to do other research as well. Okay, so it's not enough in the textbook. So I know some of you were asking, but specifically as well for this question, you're going to need to do that extra research on the interpersonal role. Okay, so the theory is that they're saying that managers have got 3 major roles. Remember, if you've gone up to this point in your theory, we've got the interpersonal role, we've got the information role, and we've got the decision-making role. Okay, so we've got 3 roles that we're looking at, and we are focusing on only the interpersonal role. So we are specifically focusing on the personal role. And underneath them, you will see there are 3 different subheadings of what it means when I'm dealing with people. So as a leader, it's my job to connect with people, to build relationships with people. And in order to do that, I need to be a figurehead, a leader, a liaison. Okay, so those are our 3 sub roles that you are then going to explain in more detail. Okay, so we're looking at the 3 roles, and then we focus on the interpersonal ones. You only need to write about the interpersonal, and then those 3 sub roles. So you're writing a decent sized paragraph for 15 marks. We're looking at least 15 facts here, and we're going to then have the interpersonal role, but we not only have the theory, remember the golden rule, theory and application. So describe the interpersonal role, describe the 3 sub roles, and then apply. Say, is Harry Faree a good example of these roles? Is he fulfilling these roles? So if we have to look at interpersonal roles as a, let's say, a leader or a liaison, is he a good liaison in the organization? Is he a good leader in the organization? And that's where you're going to have to then justify your answers. So justify those answers, okay? Yes, so we are just working on interpersonal role. You're not going to worry about the information role and the decision-making role. We are just focusing on interpersonal. So you can leave out the other 2. Yes, 100%, Nate, you're correct. We're just focusing on interpersonal. And then underneath interpersonal, you need to focus on the 3 sub-roles just for interpersonal. And then apply each one of those to Harry Faree. So again, if we just have to break it down, the theory, what you're going to include in your theory, you're going to include a definition and an explanation for the interpersonal role. In that definition and explanation, you need to include the sub-roles, figurehead, liaison, and leader. So you need to have an explanation and a definition for those 3. Once you finish the theory, you then apply. And the application part would be asking yourself, is Harry Faree a good figurehead? Why not? Is he a good example of a leader? Why not? Is he a good liaison within Capitec Bank? Why not? So again, here you would have that justification. You would have to justify your answer coming through there as well. Okay. So if we move on then to question 2.2, again, we're looking at Harry Nell here. This is a picture of him that you would see. And we jump towards the end of the textbook. Again, remember, we are moving towards our leadership module, which is Learning Unit 4. So we're looking at page 572, where they speak about the different types of leader. And you'll see on page 572, they give you a lot of information about what is a transformational leader. So it's important to realize that this question is not asking you to explain transformational leadership. They are asking you whether you think that Harry Nell is a transformational leader or not. So how would you tackle this question? Again, I would want you to just have a little bit of theory first and then focus big on the application. So this is not in proportion. We've got a little bit of theory. So your answer would start something like one definition of what a transformational leader is. So you could just say transformational leadership focuses on emotional intelligence and leading with heart, or whatever your definition is of transformational leadership. Reference, where did you find that leader or that definition? And then apply. Harry Faree is a good example of a transformational leader because he da. Or I do not believe Harry Faree is a good example of a transformational leader because he does not. So you're looking at least 8 justification points. So you're looking at your theory, which would just be your definition for 2 points, 2 marks, and your application, your justification. Have at least 8 points there of justification as to why you say he is a transformational leader, or why do you say he isn't a transformational leader? And again, do further research and reference, 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 reference. So whatever you've researched and included here in the question, please also just make sure that you are referencing it. Okay? And then the last question, part of question 2, before we get to the essay, is also a lot of writing that you've got here for 15 marks. So it's a big question. Again, we are working in motivation. So we're working towards the end of our chapter where we speak about the different motivational theories. And the motivational theory that they want you to focus on for this is the expectancy theory. The expectancy theory. So first and foremost, you need to understand what the expectancy theory is. Okay? So for example, the expectancy theory, just in a nutshell, is when an employee thinks that my efforts, what I'm doing, is going to be in direct relations to my performance. Okay? So if I perform well, I expect a reward. Okay? So then if I expect a reward, I'm going to work hard because I want that reward. So my expectations have become a reality. Okay, so I feel like there's a reward there. I expect the reward. I'm going to work hard in order to get that reward. Okay, so I place value on it and I want to work hard in order to achieve it. So you need to take Victor Froome's expectancy theory and you need to apply it to the case study, which is Capitec. So you'll see there's a lot of information on the expectancy theory. What I want you to focus on is the actual expectancy, the instrumentality, and the valence of the theory. Okay, so those words may sound like Greek to you at the moment. Don't panic about it. Once you've read through the theory and you understand it, it will make sense as well. I will also upload, I have a very nice video which I will upload for you guys as well. Once we are finished with the session, I will go and upload it. It explains this theory in a lot more detail as well, so that will also help you. So I'll go and put it up on the correct channel for you guys to use it. So what you need to do for the expectancy theory of motivation, you need to focus on how the effort affects the performance in order to get the reward. So those are our three main functions that we've got. So effort we refer to as expectancy, performance, the instruments, the instrumentality, how do we do it? And then the reward is the valence that we're going to get. The valence, what is the reward? So that's just a fancy word for the value that I'm putting on that reward at the end of the day. So valence is just another fancy word for the value that we're going to get. So the question is now saying, how can Capitec apply it? All right. So please, ladies and gents, I also want the theory here. Remember, you've got to always start with theory. So explain, define expectancy theory. Explain those points that I told you. So just a brief definition of each one of the points would be it. And then the big section would be the application. How can Capitec apply this theory? So what can Capitec do in order to apply this expectancy theory in the workplace? Okay, so this question will take a little bit of time to think about. It's a lot to sort of organize and to map out, but once you understand the theory, you can then apply it to the case study. Okay. If we need another session on this question, I think if any of the questions, it might be this one, I will host another workshop where we can unpack this question in more detail as well. I just don't want to give you too much information overload on one night. But like I say, I have noticed that this question might be a tricky point, so I will unpack it in a lot more detail as well. Okay. And then the final question, ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up, is our essay. They give us a word limit on the essay. Remember that 100 words here or there is not going to be the end of the world. So if you are writing 1,000 words, that's acceptable. Try not write lower than 800 because there's a lot of information that needs to go in here as well. And they are speaking about the management process of the organization. So you're going to write an essay in which you elaborate in more detail about the management process, okay? So just to make it simple, remember, in business management, we have four main functions that form part of our business process. You would have learned the acronym that you would have, R, PLOC or POLK. Doesn't matter which order, but that is what they are. Planning, leading, organizing, controlling. So you're going to base your essay around these four concepts: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So you're going to speak about the process of planning, leading, organizing, and controlling, okay? And then you're going to focus on how an organization needs to do it. And for each one of them, you are then going to practically apply it. So give an example of planning, give an example of leading, give an example of the organization, give an example of controlling. So you're going to spend a lot of time in your essay defining and giving examples of polk or plock. All right. After that, I want you to then just very quickly touch on the last few points of the management process definition as well. Okay. So that is just how we can be effective, how we can be efficient. So if we look at the definition of what the management process is, they speak about achieving organizational goals, they speak about effectiveness, they speak about using limited resources and managing in the changing environment. So just to end off your essay, touching on those few points. So you don't have to go into detail about them, but just mention that they are still part of the process. They're still part of our definition, even though our main focus is going to be on the POLK, the planning, leading, organizing, and controlling. There is a rubric that they give us, so there is a rubric that you can use for the question as well. Obviously, you're going to get 5 marks for the introduction, the structure, the conclusion, and then you're going to get the balance for the for the content, okay, for the content that you're going to use. So to get good marks for this, remember, you need a good theoretical explanation, but then you also need insightful examples. That's the exact word that they use from the rubric. Insightful examples. So you need good theory and good examples for each one of them. So these examples you can make up, they can be hypothetical, and then obviously you can also apply them within the organization. Okay, so you can then also apply them to the organization that you would choose. So you're going to choose an organization and think about the examples that you would need to apply them to as well. So theory, definitions, explanations, application would be those examples that are specifically related to the organization that you have chosen. So you take an organization, let's say, for example, SPAR or Checkers, and you apply the management process to that. So what are some of the tasks, the details that they would need to focus on in that organization? And then that is needing to be done 900 words for 20 marks, 5 marks for structure, 15 marks for the application. There's a lot of information in your textbook. It's a good starting point. Obviously, the only research that you would then need to do for here is on your organization and how they can use those examples within the organization. Right. Let's just quickly check. Are there any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Remember to reference. Yes, Hendrik, absolutely. You may definitely use your own business. Any business is acceptable. If it's your own business, 100%, no problem. And you can also make one up if you need to, Ricardo. That's not a problem. I don't think the focus is on the organization that you're choosing or that you're doing it on. The emphasis must be on the example. So it doesn't matter what organization it is, as long as your example. So if you say you are planning, that it's a relevant example to how the organization plans. How does the organization lead? So it doesn't really matter which organization you are choosing. That's almost irrelevant, because we just want to see that you understand the definition of each of them, as well as, or as all the functions, and then the examples. Yes, you can use Capitec again as well, no problem. I remember from last year we had a very similar question, and the students also did use it, so 100%. You might be tired of Capitec by the time you get to question 4 though, but you're welcome to use it again, 100%. Using ABSA or Nedbank, yeah, you can. So that really is all from my side, ladies and gents. I know that some of you have logged off to go to that other session, so that's okay. Thank you guys all for joining. And come back and listen to the recording, and I'll go through some more LICA things. I will, see how we're going, where we stuck, and we can always meet up again and unpack questions in. Well done for getting this far, guys. I know that you guys are working hard on it. I can see by the questions as well, that you guys have actually taken some time to think about the assignment. So that's always important, to just give yourself enough time to complete them. Thank you, everyone. I will make the recording available as soon as possible. It does take a little bit of time to download, but as soon as it is possible downloaded, I will go and post it. And then I will also go and fix that link. So thank you, dear Vault, for letting me know that it is incorrect. And then I will go and fix that up as well. Have a wonderful evening further, everyone. Bye.